Hello, and welcome to River Network's self-paced organizational growth learning series, focused on key topics for organizations growing their internal capacity. This series is best suited for groups who have already invested in their basic organizational structures, such as their mission statement, roles, leadership, and work plans. You can learn more about those topics by accessing our Organizational Health self-paced learning series. This episode of the Organizational Growth Series is covering evaluation systems, with special attention to internal evaluations. For those who aren't familiar with River Network, we work to grow and strengthen a national network of water, justice, and river advocates. We convene and build our network with training, resources, peer groups, technical support, funding, and in-person gatherings like our national conference, River Rally. River Network envisions a powerful and inclusive movement that ensures abundant clean water for all people and nature to thrive. Our work includes three focus areas: climate resilient communities, healthy and resilient rivers, and clean, safe, affordable drinking water. We work to build strong organizations and leaders across all of these focus areas, which is what brings us here today to talk about key characteristics of a growing organization. At River Network, we know that we do our best work in partnership with others. This video training series is a collaboration with the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, an organization in New York State that is uniting and empowering communities to protect their shared waters. Funding for this series comes in part from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund through the Hudson River Estuary Program of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Following along the organizational growth checklist, we're now on the fourth topic, evaluation systems. This topic is a great extension of the leadership policies and planning from episode 3 and sets us up to think through what kinds of internal and external metrics help inform completing a community assessment, which we will cover in episode 5 to conclude this series. As an overview of today's episode, we're going to cover a few different types of evaluation systems and methods. Internally, we'll cover how to evaluate the executive director or group leader or leaders, evaluating the board of directors or leadership team, and evaluating the organization or group as a whole. We will also talk through volunteer evaluations, which, depending on your structure, might feel internal or external. Externally, though, we'll cover a few methods and platforms to easily evaluate your projects and programs. Let's start by establishing why evaluation systems are worth investing in. Donors, grant officers, your supporters, and even your volunteers in leadership are often curious to know, how do we measure our success? Are we actually making progress toward our goals? Are we doing okay? In order to answer those questions honestly, it's beneficial to have evaluation measures in place at multiple levels. Having current and detailed answers to those questions can help keep donors and volunteers engaged. It provides motivation to your team internally and lets the community know you're actually addressing issues and needs. Additionally, evaluations are a valuable communication tool. They work well when they enable dialogue between two parties about successes, challenges, and areas for growth. Ideally, they also serve as a way to celebrate and acknowledge work well done. Let's dive in. One of the key responsibilities of an organization's leadership team, including the board of directors at a nonprofit organization, is to supervise and evaluate the executive director or program leader. For the sake of keeping this simple, we'll refer to the group doing the evaluation as the board, and the person or people being evaluated as the leader. Know that you can swap in your own group structural language, and this is still applicable. The board should plan to evaluate the leader on an annual basis and have written procedures detailing how that evaluation is done, who is involved, and when the evaluation occurs to ensure accountability by all parties. The board chair is responsible for leading this effort, but may call upon their fellow board officers, committees, or the full board to provide feedback and observations on the leader. Feedback may be collected through an anonymous survey, which can include board members, staff, trusted volunteers, or others. Or this information can be collected through interviews, but note that those are impossible to make anonymous despite providing more authentic responses at times. Regardless of how feedback is collected from others, The leader themselves should be given an opportunity to submit an evaluation. Self-evaluations compared against feedback from others can be very helpful in identifying areas for growth. The board chair and leader can then use their respective data to have a conversation. It's important that the evaluation is a dialogue between both parties and not delivered in a top-down fashion. Evaluations are meant to identify areas for growth as well as celebrate successes. Following this conversation, the evaluation should be documented, signed, and kept confidential, but still accessible to other board members. Regular leadership evaluations keep organizations nimble, proactive, and aware of their needs, and enables leaders to continue growing in their roles with adequate support. BoardSource can be a valuable resource for leadership evaluations with templates, recommendations, and guidelines. In addition to evaluating the leader or leaders, the board or leadership team should also lead the effort to evaluate themselves. Again, we'll use board and leader here to keep the language simple, but please substitute your own language to make this relevant for your use. Using a combination of surveys or interviews, the board can use the evaluation process to identify issues that should be addressed, implement new meeting policies and procedures, or celebrate successes. The board chair can choose to use the evaluation process to meet one-on-one with individual members, or they may distribute a survey that assesses the knowledge, skills, confidence, and goals of the group. Regardless of how the evaluations are done, similar to the process for evaluating the leader, the process should be written and documented and enable meaningful discussion. Well-executed board evaluations should result in actions taken based on the feedback collected, and therefore better retention of board members or leadership team members. While it would be easy to recommend that board evaluations are also done annually, prioritizing the capacity to do leadership and board evaluations might be challenging. We recommend that at minimum, board evaluations are completed anytime there is a change in board composition, meaning when a member joins, leaves, or changes positions. However, prioritizing board evaluations on an annual basis can be extremely supportive to the leaders of a group, so find a cadence that works well for those leading your group or organization. If board evaluations are hard to prioritize, we recommend instead prioritizing the organizational evaluation we're talking about next. To determine whether or not the organization at large is successful in achieving its mission or individual work plan goals, an organizational evaluation should incorporate benchmarks that will measure progress and success. These benchmarks can be related to programming, organizational health, and organizational growth, and include both quantitative and qualitative metrics. It's helpful to start designing organizational evaluation tools by referencing your most recent work plan, strategic plan, program grants, or wherever the group's work has been documented. We also recommend having your mission, vision, and values statements handy. Working off of those documents ensures that your evaluation tool measures what you've already committed to and what you communicate your goals are. Beyond these higher level indicators, organizations can expand their evaluations through a number of more specific feedback mechanisms, such as surveys at educational and outreach events, which are helpful for program-specific evaluations. But be sure to limit them to a handful of high-impact questions that actually tell you what you want to know. You could use membership polls, which help get a sense of what issues are on the minds of your supporters, where they see opportunities for your work to pause, grow, or change. You can consider quick 1 to 2 question polls on social media or embedded in an e-newsletter, which collect quick snapshots of how people are experiencing your work. Things like social media and newsletter metrics, such as posts viewed, subscribers, and clicks and opens, can help build a decent picture of your reach as an organization. Tools like a board inventory or organizational assessment can help indicate organizational health and growth metrics, like familiarity with the group's financial health and governance needs. And finally, informal and qualitative data that comes from one-on-one conversations with board members, volunteers, and friends should not be devalued. Often the most authentic and helpful feedback comes through personal dialogue. If organizations are not ready to conduct a full organizational evaluation, they should start with implementing evaluation of their programming, events, and outreach materials using some of the lighter lift ideas mentioned here. While it's standard to conduct organizational evaluations annually, it can be helpful to use quarterly or semi-annual evaluations when kicking off a new work plan or strategic plan. This can help determine what's working, what's not, and what can be changed. Early check-ins can save time and energy spent on strategies that aren't working well. For groups and organizations that are dominantly volunteer-run or that utilize high-capacity volunteers to deliver programs, it can be helpful to also incorporate volunteer evaluations into your procedures. Your gut reaction might be that volunteers are already giving so much of their time and energy, and it's simply too much to ask them to participate in an evaluation. However, intentionally designed evaluations can actually lead to more satisfaction and retention of volunteers and staff, if that's applicable to your group or organization. Just like all of the other evaluations we've covered, volunteer evaluations are meant to instigate meaningful dialogue that produces benefits for both the organization and the volunteer. Volunteering supports so many aspects of people's lives, including meeting social needs, professional goals, supporting one's personal values, and more. We recommend incorporating the following types of questions into a volunteer evaluation. Questions assessing the benefits or enjoyment related to someone's volunteer experience, which generates strong messages for you when you need to recruit more volunteers. Consider questions about the ease of participating, which might indicate accessibility or inclusivity needs of volunteers. Think about questions that address knowledge or skill gaps related to specific programs, which can help us understand how to increase the confidence of volunteers and enable their continued participation. Questions about the effectiveness of communications that volunteers are receiving, both about volunteer opportunities and other information or events, goes on to enable their participation. And lastly, questions about further or different engagement with the organization, which can build a pipeline of potential board members or group leaders. It's important to mention that instead of designing multiple tools, you can combine questions into one tool addressing, for example, the board and organizational evaluation, which might get used with your board annually. As another example, you could combine questions relating to volunteering and programming into one evaluation that goes to volunteers on a regular basis. Streamline these evaluation options in a way that makes sense for your group and your people. The last thing we want to do is create survey fatigue and over-ask for feedback. We've mentioned several examples already, but organizations are encouraged to use quantitative data, qualitative data, or ideally a combination of both to evaluate the executive director or leadership, board members, volunteers, and the organization as a whole. Qualitative metrics focus on behaviors and experiences and are often collected through interviews, focus groups, and open-ended questions. Questions collecting qualitative metrics may focus on things like the internal culture of the board or staff, the quality of experiences that volunteers and event participants are having, feelings or perception changes about an issue or policy, stories associated with behavior change or changed minds, or the strength of relationships with community partners. Quantitative metrics are numerical values that we can collect through surveys, sign-in sheets, CRM platforms, and program oversight. Examples could include things like the number of volunteers or people engaged, the number of volunteer hours worked, the number of trees planted or acres restored, pounds of trash collected at a cleanup event, the number of organizations or individuals that signed onto a letter, signed a petition, or attended a public hearing, and dollars raised toward a specific goal. To recap this episode, we talked about the range of evaluations a group or organization might want to utilize to track progress and measure progress, the ways to solicit feedback that help us conduct meaningful evaluations, as well as types of metrics that might be valuable. We recommend downloading the board evaluation template linked to this portion of the organizational growth checklist and personalizing it for your own use. This evaluation is a great baseline for internal organizational assessment and can be adapted for any size or type of group. We might suggest adapting it with your group members, board members, or leadership team to capture the range of metrics y'all are interested in. The next and last episode in this self-paced learning series will cover community assessments, which you can think of as a very light touch version of strategic planning. Community assessments help us understand our group or organization's place in the broader community. This might mean determining what makes your organization unique amongst others in your watershed or region, how well your organization's work resonates with the expressed needs of residents, or how the strategies to advance your work fit into a larger effort. Reference the organizational growth checklist prior to watching episode 5 for a simple introduction to the specific topics covered. Thank you for watching the 4th episode in the Organizational Growth Self-Paced Learning Series. To learn more and access additional free resources, visit rivernetwork.org.